welcome everyone. Welcome to another episode of Soul Stories because every soul has a story. And today we are here with this beautiful soul, Lianne Hofer. She is just an amazing, amazing individual, and she has got some really awesome stories to share. So I'm not even going to do a formal introduction. I'm just going to let you do that, Leanne. What would you like to tell everybody? Who are you? Why are you here? What's happening?
Who the heck is this chick and why is she talking? What your audience didn't hear is all of our chit chat that we had before we got on, because we've only been chit chatting for what, 45 minutes before we started recording. We're like, maybe we should record this. So I love that you do this, because I think every soul does have a story. And as we were talking about before we went on, the more that we talk about it, the more we realize that we're not alone and that we all are connected in incredible ways. So I really applaud you for doing this and bringing this work out, because you are part of the solution.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I think that.
Uh,
Yeah. So my story is interesting. I think everyone has an interesting story. And sometimes we don't realize just how interesting our story is. And sometimes we have to go through a lot of, I call it yogurt. It's nicer than the other word. You got to walk through a lot of yogurt before you can get to the point that you can talk about it. Um, so I grew up in a household where there was domestic violence and experienced that. I have memories before I could talk of events. And as I got older and realized that this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel like it should feel. You get the happy stuff on TV, right? You get the Walt Disney movies with, people loving each other, and you get the Hallmark and, all the good stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not what's going on in my household. So I kind of knew that what was happening was not fabulous. And then I was embarrassed. And I didn't tell anyone for a really long time of what was going on. And when I finally did say something, I told my mother, and unfortunately, she was going through her own yogurt storm at the time and really didn't have the capability to be able to do a whole lot. She just she just didn't have it. And I confided in a teacher what was happening. And teachers have to tell. And it started me on this incredible healing journey. And what was really fun is I ran into her, oh gosh, it must have been maybe my 10 or 15-year high school reunion. I'm not sure. It was definitely not the fifth. It was down a bit. And she came up to me and apologized profusely. I'm so sorry. I had to tell. I couldn't hold that. I'm required to. And I looked at her and I said, I'm not upset. And it was like you could see this Eiffel Tower worth of pressure that she's been walking around with, feeling all of this guilt just leave her body. And now we're like Facebook friends, and I talk about her, and we just had a little exchange on Facebook, this week, and it was pretty awesome. So yeah, when we share our stories, we can feel better and we can move forward. And now I've taken it so full circle that I'm now a certified domestic violence speaker in my county. So I get to go out into the community and share with other people that even if you've been through something really rough, there is still good stuff on the other side.
exactly. So how did you come to healing then? How did you make
Mm.
that?
Well, that is so healing, I think, okay. People always talk about it like an onion. I want you to take that onion, I want you to open up the kitchen window, and I want you to chuck that onion out the window, because it is not an onion. It's a cabbage. Because the outside of the leaves are easy to take off, right? I'm mad, I'm angry, I'm hurt. You can take that off. You can identify that. But then when you start getting into those inner layers, they're so tight around the center that you can't peel off a whole leaf. You get sections of leaves. And when you peel off the section of leaf, sometimes it's bigger, sometimes it's smaller. Sometimes it exposes little pieces of other leaves underneath it. So I think that we need to call it a cabbage, not an onion, because healing isn't linear. It's not take off this layer and see the next exposed layer. And I don't think you could do that anyway. I think it would be too hurtful depending on what you're going through. I mean, we're talking, you know, some sort of big trauma. And a big trauma is something that you feel or you have experienced. What's big to you may not be as big to somebody else, but maybe it is. Who knows?
Exactly. Trauma is trauma, no matter
It
how
doesn't
big
matter what
or
it
how
is.
small. Every time we experience that trauma, it's like it rips our heart out. It's like ripping part of the soul out of the body. And this ends up separating us from our bodies. It separates us from
Hmm.
each other. It separates us from the earth. And we're supposed to have our whole soul in our body. Like,
Yes.
that purity, that innocence, that childlike wonder is what the soul is. But when we're being traumatized, the soul can't come into the body.
I
And
can remember looking at my body from above, like I had actually separated from my body, and I remember looking down and saying, "This is so awful. I can't be in my body." Now, the challenge with that is creating it so that it feels safe to come back into your body.
exactly.
And it was interesting because so when everything first came out, I had to go to therapy. And therapy's great. I am not going to knock therapy, but I was too angry, pissed off, and unwilling to um, do the work because everything was just so raw and fresh, right? And it was more like, I'm going to come because he has to pay for it. So I'm going to hurt him where it counts in his wallet. So for me, it was more of a revenge thing than it was, not even revenge. It was more like, I'm going to get back at you for hurting me so bad. I'm going to hurt you too because I'm hurt. And that's okay. That's part of the process. And and the other thing was they kept telling me, it's not your fault. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. I know it's not my fault. But they couldn't seem to get past, so healing isn't linear. You start somewhere. Just start somewhere. If it doesn't work, try something else. So, um, where I'm going to bounce around a little bit. So years later, I meet up with a shaman, and she's like, "You're not fully in your body," and I'm like, "Huh?" I mean, what are you talking about? I mean, she picked up on that just from me working with her as a home organizer, just being next to her. And she gave me some things to do to get myself back into my body, some practices, which were very helpful.
But wow.
Yeah. So once we can get back into our body and create that safe space and
Exactly. And I think that, just like you didn't know that you weren't all in your body, most people have no idea that they're not in their bodies. We don't even have the idea that we can't be in our bodies because we have been taught that we are these bodies. We're not these bodies. We are the soul, the living life force essence that is animating the body. So
yeah.
it's such a mind flip. It's like this causes the amnesia. We
Hmm.
forget who we actually are, and we walk around thinking that we are these physical bodies, and that
This is
life
just the
begins
car.
at birth and ends at death, and that's all there is.
This is the car. The
Yeah,
soul is like the driver, and this is the car. Yeah, and here's the cool thing about that, right? Like the car can get into an accident and it can be repaired.
yes, got it built right in, self-healing vehicle.
So cool. Yeah. So, I mean, right, and there's so many different ways to do that.
Yes.
To get your to allow your body to heal itself because the body is made to heal itself. So going back into my story, so I've got a preschool age child, and he comes home from preschool one day and he flips the bird and he says, "Mom, what does this mean?" And I said, let's not do that. And it doesn't mean something nice, so we're not going to do that. Where did you learn that? And he's like, "Oh, his little girlfriend at preschool taught him." So I called up his little girlfriend's mom and said, "Hey, girlfriend's mom, I think that you should know that your daughter taught my son the bird, and I'm not upset about it. He's going to learn it at some point. At least this way, he's young, and I can teach him that this is something we don't, to this day, he will not flip the bird." So, um, she felt so terrible. She's like, "You know what? I think as a way to help make up for it, we went to the spa." Well, back in those days, there weren't computers, there was pen and paper. And she wrote, when we called to make the appointment, they put both of our names in the same appointment and then didn't move one of the names over. So the massage therapist said, "Listen, Lisa, I'm going to see you for the first, 20, 25 minutes, and then I'll clean up, and then I'll see Leanne for the other 20, 25 minutes. That way you both get some sort of a service for being here today," because the schedule didn't allow, they were fully booked. And we're like, "Okay." Well, I floated down the stairs, went to the front desk and said, "I don't know what that woman did, but I need more of her. When can I come in?" I saw her for 5 years.
Oh my God.
She did Reiki with massage. So when I went back, she said, "I need to apologize. I used Reiki while I was massaging you, and I didn't tell you." And I said, "Oh, what's Reiki?" And then she explained it's a Japanese healing technique and it helps to balance, your energies. And I went, "Well, I'm not upset because I'm back. So you're in the clear. We're good."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Well, I'm going to use it today if you're okay with it." And I was like, "Yeah, sure." When the massage was over, I was, I'm on the massage table. I got the sheet over me. I snot cried for 45 minutes. The ugly, horrific release cry. They had to cancel the next appointment because I'm butt naked underneath the sheet and can't get up.
Ah,
I'm a hot mess. And I'm literally under the sheet sticking my hand out for a fresh tissue. I've got a mound of tissues growing next to me. Reiki found the unlocked screen door in the back that I didn't know I had. I had this beautiful cinder block wall in front of me that was 10 feet thick. Reiki found the unlocked back door, and it started a huge healing process. So if you are listening to this and you are going through something, it is healing can happen from a lot of different modalities, and don't be afraid to try something different.
right. Sort of like the old, when the student is ready, the teacher will come. It's like when you're ready to heal, the universe is going to help you heal,
Mhm.
whatever that looks like.
Yeah. And then when I moved to a different state and didn't know anyone, I was afraid to just see anyone because now I've had this relationship with this woman who's done a lot of healing for me, and I'm a little nervous to see somebody else. So the universe showed up again for me and said, "Hey, Leanne, I'm going to learn how to do Reiki. You want to learn how to do Reiki on yourself?" I'm like, "Heck yeah, sign me up." So I became a Reiki master,
Beautiful.
and that's been a part of it too. So yeah, I think sometimes when whatever we're going through, we forget that it's not just one thing or the other. To be open to, if it seems weird, do it anyway. Try it. As long as it's not going to hurt you, try it.
Exactly. Our inner guidance, that soul, is the universal intelligence. It's our higher intelligence, and it's always speaking to us as long as we're in the body, right? The soul is speaking to us directly through the sensations in our body, and we can feel when something is in alignment, and we can feel when it's out of alignment.
Mm-hmm.
So when you learn to be able to trust that feeling, it's like, "Hey, do you want to do this?" Yeah, that seems exciting. Let's do it. Right?
And I think that's part of the problem with society in general, right? Like we're taught don't trust your body.
Exactly.
And that phrase trust your gut because your gut has more neurons and sensitivity in it than your brain does. So the reason trust your gut is because your gut figures it out before your brain does. The problem is that we learn to override it in the mind.
Absolutely. Ever since we've been children, we have been taught to override that feeling. It's like, I don't want to drink that milk. You're going to drink that milk. And it's like, oh, it's like, so we're just kind of strong armed into overriding our internal knowing.
Mhm.
Going to school, you will sit there, you will listen to the teacher, you will do.
And if you can't, we're going to give you drugs so that you can sit there.
Right? Exactly. It's like, this is it. We're literally taught out of listening to our inner knowing. And it makes a society that's far more easily controlled because people that can't listen to their own inner guidance need to be guided by somebody else. And, the government's very happy to guide you in all kinds of different directions,
Sure.
right?
Yeah. So one of the practices that I like to use when I feel like I'm out of my body is just to tap. Just tap. Oh, yeah, I'm here. This is safe. I can do this. So, not even tapping, which is a practice, that's another whole practice,
Right.
but just tapping my body, just kind of tapping my arms, tapping my legs, tapping my hips, even sometimes stamping my feet. Just, oh, yeah, okay, I'm in my body. It's okay. I'm safe. I'm good.
I love that.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Northeast. Yeah. And in a household, I was always proud of the fact that my parents were still married, right? And, because divorce was such a thing back then. And, you know, it's kind of weird when you think about it that way. I was like, oh yeah, I'm glad my parents are married, but I'm going home to a unsafe, unsafe living place.
Oh,
So yeah,
wow. And so what was life like outside of the house? Like when you went to school, like did you have a lot of friends? Were you just kind of the shy and retiring type like me, or were you outgoing and
do I strike you as the, the shy and quiet type? No, I've always had a lot of friends, and I was always very busy out. I got myself as busy outside of the house because being in the house wasn't safe. So being outside of the house was much safer. So even the mean girls were safer than being at home. So I did a lot of stuff out. So I was very involved in gymnastics. I was very involved in our church. We had a really good youth group. I was very involved with the youth group doing things. And then, of course, once I got the freedom of a driver's license, I started working. I did a lot of babysitting. I always stayed busy as I could outside of the house. So one of the other interesting things is that I didn't want to stay home when I was like a preteen, like junior high, early high school, like out of grammar school, but not freedom with a driver's license yet. And my mom did in-home parties for a multi-level marketing company, and I used to go with her.
ah,
And you'd think that that would have thrown a flag. Why does my 12 and 13-year-old daughter want to come to a party with a bunch of moms sitting around looking at the product that she sold
right?
and hang out with me instead of sitting at home on the phone chatting with her friends or going out with her friends? It's because I didn't want to be home alone.
Right. Wow. Did you have brothers and sisters?
I have two brothers. They're both younger.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. So, but then the other thing that happened with my mom is that I noticed, and this is where I turned a trauma response into a positive. And I think mindset is everything.
Absolutely.
Everything. So what I noticed is when my mom's depression would rise, so would the piles of clutter. And when I went through and straightened and tidied, she would feel better. So my trauma response came, I can't trust my body because my body's not safe, but I can control the environment I live in from the physical standpoint. So I would clean out the linen closet. I'd clean out the pantry. I'd clean out the fridge. I'd clean off the dining room table. Because back then we got newspapers in the morning, newspapers in the afternoon. There was, used to get 7 Victoria's Secret catalogs a day. I mean, all of the things, right? And I would clean all of that off. And when I did that, she felt better. And when she felt better, life was a little bit better. So that was where that came in. And then I took that trauma response years later. So my formal training is actually in the dental field. And then when I moved to a state that didn't recognize any of my licensures, I decided it was a chapter well written. And I was visiting with a friend, and she's like, that's what you need to do. You do it all the time for everybody. So I turned it into a business.
Wow, clutter consultant. I love it. Oh my gosh.
Let that stuff go. But then what was interesting, and here's where it comes full circle. Now, when I work with people, I get to see and I can recognize as someone who's been through some tough stuff. I can see somebody else going through that tough stuff. So I come in. It's incredible what people tell me. I know so many things. They tell me all these things, and I'm like, please just tell me you got help. Just tell me that you've done something to help yourself. But when I'm working in a space, sometimes I have an assistant, and sometimes she'll be like, do you feel this? I'm like, yeah. Do you feel like you want to cry? She's like, yeah. So we can pick it up in a space. We don't say anything, but we can feel it. But it allows us to work that much better with someone because we can be a little more tender, a little more soft, a little more caring in our approach, which is great. But then people tell me everything. Because we see everything. We're not a guest in your house. We see how you talk to each other. We see how you carry yourself through the day. We hear what you're mumbling to yourself. So we sometimes get to help you too, which is kind of cool.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah.
Gosh. And you have a clutter consulting club online. You have a membership, correct?
I do. It's called the Tidy Tribe. And right now, I've got a couple of ladies that are working with me in there, and we meet once a week. We talk about a different area of the home and how to best organize it and how to let go and kind of help them to navigate because sometimes getting rid of a mug isn't as easy as just getting rid of a mug.
Right. So many memories attached to things and sentimental value and oh my heavens, yes.
And then the importance in your life, like what direction do you want to go? Because your home should support you, I believe, because my home supported me, got me through a whole lot of stuff. So how do you set up the house to support you? Is it important that you have 6 drinking glasses that all match, or is it more important that you have 6 glasses that each have a memory attached to them that makes you feel good? And that's the other thing. Just because Aunt Bertha gave it to you doesn't mean. So just because Aunt Bertha gave it to you and you don't like it, you don't have to keep it. You can let it go. I give you permission to let it go because you don't have to hold on to the stuff that doesn't feel good because your house should make you feel good.
Exactly. Boy, I could have used you when I set up my most recent household. It's like I was kind of in a deep dark hole and it was just like, I don't care. I'm just gonna be here. That was
And what's funny is when we walk into a space like that, or when I walk into a space like that, I can identify that right away.
right.
I'm like, oh, okay. So, but you're not there anymore. Now you're somewhere else. So now you can change it up. And that's the beauty of your physical space, right? Just because it looks like one thing, you can change it. And your body is the same thing. And that's what's so cool, right? You can change it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So
Yep.
making it safe if you've been through something like I've been through, making it safe to be in your body and to trust your body. And it's a process. It's not just simple layers. It's complicated. And that's okay. That's what makes it rich and exciting because, you can eat something with cinnamon on it or you can eat something with cinnamon, nutmeg, and clove, and it's way better.
Absolutely. It's so interesting how kind of every one thing is everything. You know, how our bodies are, it's like how our houses are, is how our lives are, is how our cars are, it's like everything reflects everything else. It's all a
Yeah.
reflection of us.
And it doesn't matter where you start, right? Like if you're not ready to start in your body, then start in the physical space that you live in, and that will help you to translate into your body, almost finding your unlocked back door that you didn't know you had.
Exactly. Yeah, my space has gone through many, many iterations, just like my body has been going through many, many iterations, and the process continues. It's never a one and done deal. We're
And I
always
think sometimes that's what holds people up. I think like there isn't a final destination. It's a lifelong journey. And I think somehow we think that somehow that mm, I think somehow that is a sticking point for folks, is to know that yes, you're going to arrive here, but you're not going to stay here. You're going to keep moving.
right. And also people think that I mean, at least when I started my own physical body healing journey, I just assumed that it's like, okay, well, healing is just going to be, I'm just going to feel better and better and better every day. And it's going to take, oh, maybe 6 months or a year, and then I'm done. It's like, that was not in any way, shape, or form what it looked like.
Oh, because you're still having thoughts and you're still eating foods and you're still going places and doing things and you're still using things in the environment. I mean, there's all these different aspects that come in.
Right. And we still have all these unhealed traumas from the past.
Yeah.
Our body, if we have unhealed wounds, those unhealed wounds are hanging out in our physical space. They're in our bodies. They're in the DNA. And there's nothing wrong with our physical bodies other than the fact that we've shoved a whole bunch of trauma in there, and we're walking around carrying all of this trauma.
Oh,
And
but
then we
wait,
expect the
but
body
wait.
to be healthy and vibrant and alive.
Let's seal all that trauma and guilt and shame. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's
Let's
really
not
make it.
talk about it because we don't want anybody to know that we're not perfect.
And let it really fester and grow. I was in a networking meeting probably about when I first started my business, and I said something that like I'd forgotten to do something or forgot to bring something, or I don't remember. It was something small. And somebody said to me, and this really stuck with me, "Oh, you're not perfect?" I'm like, "No. Is that what I'm giving off? Because I'm not perfect by any means." It was just like this moment of how people perceived me and how what I was putting out there. But inside, I mean, I was a little better at that point. I was a complete wreck, but I was still under construction. Yeah, and the other thing is it's not just one trauma. Like you get many traumas. So
Mhm.
like I have a lot of traumas. When I was born, I had birth defects. My parents were told I'd never walk. Before a year old, I had major surgery. And I was so small that they couldn't put me in traction. They ended up gluing sandbags to my legs to put me in traction. Well, you know what they have to do to the sandbags when they're done with them? They got to rip them off. And guess what comes with them when you glue them to your skin? Your skin.
Ooh, I've never
So,
heard of that. That just sounds like a major torture thing.
so, and then I spent the rest of my time in, body casts and braces and things like that. I mean, I don't remember any of it, but
Oh,
I don't, well, my brain doesn't remember any of it, but my body remembers it. Like it's still here.
wow.
And then I have sexual abuse growing up. Oh my gosh. And then I was diagnosed with cancer at one point. And then, it's like my parents got a divorce. All of these things. I've been in a major car accident. I mean, we all, once you've been here on the planet for a while, we came here to experience all these things. But what if they're not bad? What if? So I don't know that I fully grasp the whole thing of soul contracts. I haven't read the book yet. I have Catherine Miss's book downstairs. I need to read it.
Uh,
But my understanding is that before we came here, we made an agreement with the people that are around us. Like you and I made an agreement at some point to bring something out to light. And this is how we've decided to do it. Healthy, it's good because we made that choice. But when I was small, a person who was close to me made a choice to do something that was not pleasant, was not wonderful. And it taught me a lesson that maybe I asked to learn or something that I asked to learn beforehand. So, as a human being, he's still on the hook for his actions because we have free will and you're responsible for what you do, and we all make mistakes, and there's that. But somewhere we agreed to teach each other something. So, whether I taught him or he taught me, I don't know. It's a soul thing, so I don't know as a human. But what if he was here to teach me something and I learned it? If I hold on to the bitter and the anger, that's not helping me, and it's certainly not doing anything for him. He's going to have to answer for his things. I have to answer for my things. So this happened. So then I can take it and move it forward. So my trauma response became a business, a profitable business that I got to go and empower other women to go out and do great things and to help other people. And I get to go into homes and help those people work through their weeds and their things that they're dealing with, that they're lost in, and, helping them understand. And, you know, that's a pretty cool thing when you look at that.
right?
So what if it isn't all bad?
Right? And what if by us going through these things, we are the last ones that need to go through it? What if we're the ones that learn the lesson and then the lesson stops with us? And then we can show other people how to proceed in life without having to learn these really, really traumatic things and repeat these really traumatic things,
Yes.
where we can move forward and help people to clear out all the residual stuff and start shining their light again and being happy again.
Yeah.
Wholeness, that's one of your things as
Mhm.
well.
Yep. So, yeah. So, what if we get a generation or two away from where we are now and we start to see that positive ripple happening? Because it starts, right? It starts with a ripple. What is it? The butterfly effect. The butterfly flaps his wings and then ends up with a tsunami. What if the tsunami's coming? But what if that tsunami is amazing?
Exactly.
What if the ripples that we're creating by doing these things?
Now is the time. This is the time of the great shift. This
Mm-hmm.
is where we have the great awakening and we start to realize, like, hey, we have been incubating in a, basically a backwards society that has been inflicting trauma on all of humanity and on Mother Earth for a very long time. And
Mm-hmm.
it's time to stop inflicting trauma. Like, we can't
Yes.
continue to pollute the earth. We can't continue to clear cut the forest and, strip mine and harm Mother Earth's body and expect our bodies to be perfect and healthy. Like, they all go together.
Yep.
So one type of trauma inflicts other types of trauma as well.
Well, the
So
butterfly effect works both ways.
exactly, yes.
So, what do you want to, what you want to perpetuate and what would you like to see stop? And, to stop something, it's hard. It's not easy. I mean, look at like people who are recovering or recovered. I don't, do we call that recovered or recovering? I think they're always recovering. Alcoholics or people who have been abusing drugs. I mean, it's always going to be there. It's always going to call to them. I mean, I think I don't have that challenge, but my understanding of it is that it's always going to be something that you are going to be dealing with every day. But when you say no to participating in that activity, you are a change maker. That is gigantic.
Exactly. And we all have that power. It's just that our personal power has been so stripped away by the traumas that we feel like we're powerless. We feel
Hmm.
like we're victims, but we're not. Like, we have so much inherent power within, and that power is our love. It's our innocence. It's the purity of the soul that we are. And once we realize that our trauma isn't our fault, we're not the perpetrator of our own trauma. However, we are responsible for clearing it up. We're responsible for putting a stop to it, for not participating any further, and for doing our inner work, for doing our healing. And we all have that power. And when
Yeah.
we come together and talk and hold space for each other, where we can have conversations and share stories without the um, without feeling like, oh my gosh, they're going to criticize me, or they're going to reject me, or they're going to tell me I'm wrong, or when we can just come together and talk and hold that space for each other, and being able to just simply share our story. I mean, it's so, it can relieve such a burden, you know
Yes.
carrying it inside.
Yeah. And I think that sometimes we don't know how to articulate it
Mm,
initially. Like when we're first ready to start working through it, we're not sure how to articulate it. And that's where a lot of different modalities can really be helpful to help kind of start giving us the ability to talk about it. So, one of the things that has been very helpful for me, I like to give stuff, right? Like this is great and wonderful, but like what do I do? So one of the things that really helped me for forgiveness was I wrote a letter, and I didn't worry about editing. I didn't worry about even being able to read it. I just put down all of those feelings, and boy, it was like being on that massage table again. It was snot cry, it was ugly. I wrote down all kinds of stuff, pages of it. And then I folded it and I took it outside and I burned it in the fire pit. And then when I felt better, I wrote myself a letter as if I was the person that had caused the pain and I heard what I had said. So the first one was Dear Perpetrator. The second one was Dear Leanne, from the perpetrator perspective. And I've done this back and forth a few times. Sometimes it's verbal even. Sometimes I've just done it into my phone. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to discharge some stuff. And I'll whip out my phone on the recording and I'll record it and then I just delete it. I don't even listen to it. I just have to get it out. So sometimes you don't even have to talk to someone. It's just getting it out. But when you are feeling the need to talk to someone, finding some community is huge. So there are different places in wherever you are in your community where there are support groups, where there are phone numbers that you can call for help to talk to someone. There's even some apps now where you can get on and you can talk to somebody for free. I mean, they're not therapists and I don't know exactly how well trained they are, but it's a listening ear for you to at least dump out whatever you need to dump out.
yeah. And you don't really have to look all that far to find people who have been through what you've been through, something very similar to what you've been through. So somebody who's been through something very similar, a lot of times they're just a good person to talk to, because they can hold that space. They understand that
Yeah.
you're not looking for a solution. You're not looking to be judged or critiqued, or told, oh, it's going to be okay. You just need somebody to listen.
Yeah, just somebody who kind of gets where you're coming from and isn't going to judge. So I'm a certified domestic violence speaker. And when I went to the training, almost everyone in the room had experienced some form or fashion of something that falls under the umbrella of domestic violence. And it was so healing to be in the room. We called ourselves family after 3 days. And we have like this little chat, this little private chat where we all get to come in and share, our little wins and our celebrations. And it's very healing to have that. And I think the most important thing that I took away from that, not only, well, the reason I did it was because um, I had participated in a book about healing from childhood sexual trauma. And in that, sometimes I share the book and people will come up to me and they'll say, well, I think something happened to me. And I'm like, um, okay. Did you get some help? Have you talked to somebody? You don't need to be alone. But then I was like, okay, so what else can I do? So I took the training more for that, but now I get to speak about it too, which is kind of cool. And I get to show you that yes, you can go through this, and yes, you can still have healthy relationships afterwards, and you can still have a loving relationship, and you can still be happy. You can still do these things, and they're not always, I mean, they require some work, but anything that's worth it has some work. I mean, you don't get six-pack abs by eating an apple. I mean, come on now. So but in the training, I think one of the most important things that everyone took away was that you're not alone. And they're finding that I think the number is 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 7 boys have experienced some sort of sexual trauma before the age of 18. That number may not be quite right. It's close, but don't quote me on that. And they think the numbers are actually higher because it's not reported. So if we can start talking about it, we can stop the stigma of it. I mean, there was a time when, oh, you're divorced.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, she's a divorcee. We didn't talk about it back in the what 70s or early 80s. And today that's something, oh yeah, my girlfriend, she's divorced, dating all the time. I mean, if we can talk about it, then what we can do is we can start to work through and process it. And not only does that help us, but it helps the collective community that's exposed to it. And if the numbers are as high as 50% or higher, which is what they suspect, that
Mhm.
means it affects all of us. Because if it's not happening to us, it's somebody that we're close to or we know.
Absolutely. I lost a cousin to domestic violence, and she was out of the relationship mostly at that point, and she was living with friends, and then she was making plans to come and live with me. And but all the groups of friends that she had and me, like, she wasn't telling anybody what was actually happening.
Mm.
So when she was being beaten, when she was being, raped or abused, she wasn't telling anybody. She was home hiding under the bed and, just being in fear. And then when she got out of the situation, he was still stalking her. And
And that is the most vulnerable part of it. Believe it or not, it's not typically staying in it, although that's still terrible and horrible. I mean, don't get me wrong. But the most vulnerable part is the leaving because that's when they really clamp down.
yep,
So a
exactly.
lot of times, I know the shelter here, which I've supported because the shelter here has the thrift store. So every time that someone declutters, I take all the stuff to the thrift store because if they can support the people that have been in the shelter, as they leave the shelter, they set them up. So I tend to take everything there. But I toured the shelter and I met with some of the people there, and they're like, a lot of times these folks will literally show up with the clothes in their back.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it's really, really, it's sad. It's really devastating. And then, like, afterwards, when at the funeral, when everybody kind of got together, it was like, oh, well, I knew about this part, but then I didn't, then this person knew about that thing, and that other person knew about this thing, and but nobody had the full picture to be able to put all the pieces together and really see what was going on.
And how many times did all of you get together to have that conversation, right? And
Right?
if your friend was there, she may have been controlling the conversation a little bit to keep it so that everyone didn't know the whole thing. Because again, there's shame, there's embarrassment, there's, I don't want to be judged. I don't want pity. I don't want someone to feel sorry for me.
Right, exactly.
And yeah. And then
Yeah,
you never know what kind of mind games are being played behind the scenes too, right?
absolutely. Yeah, I didn't live in the same town. It was when I was living in Colorado at the same, I was living in Aspen and she was living in Colorado Springs. And so, we had connected, and, I hadn't seen her in a long time, but we were able to get together a few times while we were there. And 10 days before she was ready to move in with me, that's when the whole thing went down and she never moved in. So,
Mm, I'm
uh,
sorry.
yeah, it was really, it was pretty insane at the time. It was so, um, so many people were caught off guard, and when it happened, I kind of realized that I knew that something, I mean, because I was where I was trying to get her out of the situation. It's like, come up here, get out of where you are, come and live with me.
Right.
But I don't think it would have solved anything, and it probably would have only compounded things because I don't think he was going to stop stalking her at any point, until the deed was done.
And here's where the ripple effect comes out, right? You were traumatized because you lost a friend. Your friend was clearly traumatized.
Yeah,
So there's that ripple, right, that comes out, and so, have you done healing around that? Have you realized that you were traumatized by that? I mean, these are questions to come up because
yeah,
where do you store that in your body?
exactly.
And
Yes,
how long has that been sitting there? And of course, when you have something like that sitting in there and then you rip off the top, it's been sitting there for a while, so it's kind of stinky and ugly. But, like anything else with some soap and water and some band-aids and some love, you can fix it
right?
and
Exactly.
heal it. And then you have a scar with a story.
Yeah. And then we also realized, I mean, at least for me, it was also, I was in contact with her for a very long time after she transitioned. And, she would come and we would have conversations, and the conversations were like in my head. So I was like, well, it's probably just me making this up, but it wasn't. Like, I could feel her around me all the time. Yeah. So once we understand that this physical lifetime is just an experience we're having as the soul,
Yep.
that life goes on. We are literally life itself,
I
experiencing.
can't wait to see like what this world is really going on, right? Like we can only see and understand so much. Our brains can only handle so much, but there is so much more. Like the frequencies of things. What does that look like? You know, I was watching have you ever watched Expedition Unknown?
Oh,
It's on, I think it's on Discovery Channel. Well, the guy is like an adventurist and he's an archaeologist and he does all these crazy things. So he was one of the ones we just watched. He was looking at, I think they were pyramids, and he was looking at Alexander the Great. And he was, there was some question that perhaps he was buried in a Egyptian tomb, like a pyramid. And it's so interesting because as we're here longer, there are people that are doing this kind of work, which is showing things that is rewriting history. And as it's rewriting history, we get to start seeing, but how did they make these things back then when there weren't computers and there weren't, big huge forklifts and excavators and, these people running. I mean, in our heads, these people, when we think of it, an ancient Egyptian, we think of somebody wearing a black wig, maybe a little bit of face paint, a loincloth, and maybe a leather sandal. And they're building pyramids?
hey, yeah, a lot of stuff that we don't
There's
really
yeah,
know.
I can't wait to find out crop circles, right? Like how
Right?
are these happening? This is so fascinating. So I think that we're going to start to see as time goes on, but I mean, you know, when I'm no longer limited by the brain, I can't wait to like I hope I get to remember this, like remember my curiosity and somehow feed that.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what life's all about, being curious and exploring and having adventures. And that's kind of the original design of everything, right?
Right. And when you're a kid, where did you adventure? You adventured in the backyard, in your neighborhood. I mean, you guys remember having, you created all these stories and scenarios, and you were just playing with sticks and towels in the backyard with a couple folding chairs. And yet you had a castle and a whole community and, all the things. I mean, yeah, what if there's something to that?
Right? Like, what if we could be like kids again? What if we could create a world that is so safe and so peaceful that we can all be like kids? We can all become explorers once again. We can
Yeah.
all start to have adventures. Wouldn't that be amazing?
That would be amazing. And then you could get a kiss from your mom, and everything would be better because
right?
that's all it took was a little bit of love.
That's the whole thing right there. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's I
Yes.
think that's why we are here as these light workers that we are, is to bring love back to the planet so we can open up our hearts again, clear out all the trauma, and let our light shine and fill it all with love.
And then have podcasts like Soul Stories where we can be authentic about it too.
There you go. Exactly. Oh my gosh. Leanne, this has been such a great time. Thank you so much for being such a great guest today.
Oh, thank you for having me. This has been, of course, it's always fabulous to see you and to catch up. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to share my story that, no matter what you've been through, it can be better. It's a little bit of work and it's a little bit scary, but usually that's the stuff that's totally worth it.
Absolutely. Yes. Facing our fears and getting through them and coming out the other side. It's,
And the other side is this gorgeous garden.
yes, it is so empowering. There's so much more to life than what we've been allowed to know. So
Exactly.
the more we share our stories, the more we can support each other in healing, in clearing that old trauma, and seeing what life actually can be like, how great life can be.
Yes. Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes. And always remember that you matter and you are worthy.
Exactly. Yeah. So,
Yes.
yeah, how do people reach out to you if they want to work with you, if they want to find your book? How do they do that?
Oh, well, they can find me on on the web. I'm at liannehofer.com, which is my name right there, .com, or theclutterconsultant.com. I have two websites because, why not?
There you go.
And on social media, on Facebook, I'm also at the Clutter Consultant or at Lianne Hofer. And on Instagram, I'm at Lianne Hofer.
Beautiful. And if you're watching, well, you are watching on YouTube or on the podcast, just check the show notes and then the links will be right there in the show notes for ease of finding them.
Yeah,
So,
and if you really want to be adventurous with me, follow me on TikTok because I have a channel that I started just to check it out. I was scared to death. I'm like, let's just make some videos, put myself out there a little bit. Yes, it was scary, and I'm going to start putting some stuff out there as far as trauma and clutter.
oh, wow. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Wow. I'm just getting going on Instagram. I haven't got to TikTok yet. Haven't ventured into those waters yet.
You know what? You do exactly what's right for you when it feels good for you, and you start moving forward and get through Instagram, and then when you're good, then maybe TikTok isn't for you. Who knows?
Right? Exactly. Yep. We will see. Just
Who
all just
knows?
kind of allow it all to unfold organically, sort of
Yes.
like healing. It's all just an organic, natural process.
And where you're supposed to be, you'll be guided and you will know because you know to trust your body and how it feels.
Exactly. All the answers are right inside. All we have to do is look for them.
That's right. That's why when you say yes, me, you put your hand here.
That,
Yeah.
love it. Well, Leanne, thank you, thank you, thank you. This has been
Oh,
so
thank you,
fun.
Lisa.
I love our conversations. And
Always.
I hope you all have enjoyed our conversation today as well. If you have, please share it and give the podcast a like here. Give us a like on YouTube here, and please subscribe to my channel. I'm Lisa Warner. I am the author of The Simplicity of Self Healing. It's the book that I wrote after I healed myself from cancer with no doctors, no pills, no fancy diets, just simple, natural healing that's built right inside. So,
And I highly recommend it. It's a fabulous book.
thank you, thank you, thank you.
I may have a signed copy.
There you go. Never know. Beautiful. So, thank you everyone for watching today, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next Soul Stories because every soul has a story. Make yours a great one because you can. Bye for now.